Hey, what's up guys, it's Disturbed, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the absolute best way to farm in patch 1.4. Now before I get into it, I just want to mention that I am still offering a farming service where I can get on your character and farm for whatever gear you need, and once I get a bunch of gear, I make sure to set it up an amazing build with it. This is mainly just for the people that really just don't like farming and would rather have somebody else with experience do it for them. So if you tend to be one of those people that's really busy and just doesn't want to have to deal with the nuisance of farming and would rather just get out of the way so you can either PvP or just enjoy shredding NPCs in PvE, feel free to email me at disturbedmods@gmail.com and we can talk about it over there. But if you're not interested in that, this is exactly what this video is for. So let's get right into it. So in 1.3, as many of you probably know, the absolute best way to farm was to do the Dragon's Nest 4 Horseman farm. Well, that's simply just not the case anymore for multiple reasons. For one, they altered the map a bit, so you can't just camp behind that compiled trash to avoid the cars anymore, the little RCXD cars, making it much more of a pain in the ass as you have to kind of like run around the map and kite them, and it's just really much more difficult to farming. Will probably give you PTSD if you try to do it for hours on end. And on top of that, the method of just melting the bosses really doesn't work that well anymore because it's hard to get enough damage to just shred the bosses like you could with a sentry without it really being a problem. And if that wasn't enough of a reason, not all of the bosses drop high ends or gear sets anymore. Sometimes you'll kill them and they'll drop like purples or something. So really it's just not worth it to do that farm anymore because it takes significantly longer than it used to. And you end up getting less loot, and other farming methods are much better because they just upgraded they buffed the drop rates with a bunch of other farming methods. So rip the 4 Horsemen. One of the other great farming methods in 1.3 was to run the underground, but nowadays I don't really think it's that good. In a group of 4 people with only around 3 directives, I think we had the Fog of War, the Waste Not Want, and then the special directive, or the one where they had the special ammo. It took us an entire 20 minutes just to do one phase, and it was pretty aggravating as well because of the EMP bullets. And we only ended up getting like 6 to 8 pieces of loot out of it. And I know it's not going to be everybody's experience. Some people are going to be able to do it faster, but even if you are, it's still not as good as a method of some of the other things that you can do. And honestly, this is just a side note, but for me, doing the underground is just really irritating, like with the EMP bullets and all that other stuff. It just really wasn't fun. And another thing is that to get Phoenix credits out of farming the underground, you have to enable the directives, which by themselves are annoying as hell. And on top of that, the NPCs are extremely tanky in the underground, whereas in the Dark Zone, they have much less health, making it more of a nuisance to run the underground now. And I know this might be more of a personal preference type of thing, but I just personally, like I said before, I just hate running the underground. I really just don't like the atmosphere. I think it's kind of just, I don't know, bland, and I don't know. I just really don't like the area. It feels really boring to me, and worst of which is that it reminds me of 1.3, where I farmed the underground day in and day out just to get Firecrest and Blind over and over again. So the negative association really isn't helping out either, but besides my inner demons, the underground is most definitely not the place to farm for you anymore if you're looking for efficiency. And that's mostly just due to the fact that gear doesn't drop as frequent as other places, so that rules out the underground. So that's going to leave us with incursions, the Dark Zone, and HVTs. In 1.3, running incursions was pretty much the only way to guarantee yourself a certain type of gear. Like for example, a lot of people would run Falcon Lost to get that perfect sentry build going. But now that's changed, and the incursions, instead of dropping certain gear sets, they pretty much just drop specific gear set pieces. So like for example, Clear Sky could give you a holster or knee pad, or Falcon Lost could give you a mask or a chest. You know, I don't know the exact pieces that each incursion gives you because I don't really care, but that's basically how it works. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of this change, but it really doesn't matter because a full run of Falcon Lost is still going to take you just as long, if not longer, as it did in 1.3. And you end up getting significantly less loot in comparison to doing the Dark Zone or doing HVTs or even doing Underground. So if you're looking for that perfect Alpha Bridge backpack, you're still better off farming the Dark Zone or HVTs just due to how frequently everything drops, as opposed to running a certain incursion 10 different times hoping that it will drop. So unfortunately, that rules out incursions as pretty much pointless to run. So now we're left with HVTs and the Dark Zone. It's really hard to pick between the two because they both drop a lot of gear and are pretty fun to do, but the thing with HVTs is that you are limited to how many you can do every week. The only ones that I think are worth doing are going to be the weekly ones because you get tons of Phoenix credits and loot upon completion, while with the daily ones you only get like a minute amount of Phoenix credits and only a couple boss drops. So if you're looking for something that you can grind for like 10 hours, doing HVTs obviously isn't going to be the solution. Though if you like to do something solo and you don't really want to have to deal with getting killed in the Dark Zone, doing HVTs, the daily ones, could prove to be pretty nice, but you still are limited to how many you can do. So that leaves us with one clear winner, the Dark Zone. The Dark Zone is absolutely amazing for farming right now, and if you have a full group, you can get a full extraction bag literally within 5 minutes. I'm not exaggerating at all here. Clearing a landmark takes less time than it ever did, and since all the random NPCs have a chance to drop loot, you just get bathed in high ends and gear set pieces. And on top of that, the bosses drop 2 items, and you can also open up those Dark Zone chests which have 2 items as well. And you can open up those other chests that have the one high-end sealed cache in those, which are great to get for the DZ funds, the division tech, and they can often drop really good pieces of gear as well. So with these changes and just how much loot drops, you'll often find yourself getting a full bag after just clearing one single landmark, which is insane. Counting extraction time, etc., I'd say you can easily get 30 pieces of loot within half an hour to 45 minutes, possibly even faster, which in comparison to everything else is just crazy. If you were to run Falcon Lost or something, it would take you around 40 minutes to an hour just to complete it, and at the end of it, I think you only get around 6 pieces of loot, possibly more, and a little bit of Phoenix credits, so there's really just no reason not to run the Dark Zone at this point. And like I mentioned before, all the NPCs in the Dark Zone are way easier to kill now because they were scaled around the fact that they don't want NPCs to be completely cancerous in PvP, melting you and being really hard to kill. And they also want to cater to solo players, so the NPCs have way less health now, which is awesome. So you can even farm the Dark Zone as a solo player now, and it's still probably going to be better than everything else. Not to mention a full group of 4 people. With 4 people, you can just shred through everything and just get a crap load of gear. And to make things even better, when farming the Dark Zone, you can get division tech, which you can use to craft stuff, and DZ funds, which you can use to buy a bunch of crap from the vendors, which in the Dark Zone, which often sell pretty good stuff. Like this week they were selling, a pretty good vector and also some performance mods and stuff, which was, pretty good stuff. So that's another just upside to running the Dark Zone. And you also are getting way more loot than any other farm will get you, like just so much more loot. Now some of you might say that the Dark Zone doesn't really give you any Phoenix credits, so it's not worth it to farm that if you need to reroll some weapons or something. Well, I have a little bit of a counter argument for that. For one, each boss you kill drops around 5 to 7 Phoenix credits, which might not sound like a lot, but if you're playing for hours on end, it really does end up adding up. But what's even better is that the majority of the loot that you're going to be getting, you probably aren't going to need because RNGesus is an evil bastard, so you'll be selling a lot of it for no more credits, which you can then use to open up a bunch of basic sealed caches, which only cost around 200k each, and gives 5 to 15 Phoenix credits for every single box. So if you farm for like 3 hours, sell about 80% of the stuff you'll get, you'll be able to buy around 60 caches, give or take, and get over 600 Phoenix credits. And that's not even mentioning the Phoenix credits you get from killing the bosses. And if you were to farm something else, you're not going to be able to open up as much caches because farming the Dark Zone just gives you way more loot. So for all the reasons stated above, farming the Dark Zone is clearly the winner here. You get overall way more loot, you have the ability to get tons of Phoenix credits if you play it right, you get DZ funds to buy from the Dark Zone vendors, you can get division tech so you can craft stuff, and most importantly, it's just not boring as all hell like the Underground or Incursions are. It's actually, somewhat enjoyable and fun, especially doing PvP while farming. Now, I know that one of the counter arguments is going to be that in the DZ, you have the risk of losing your gear due to rogues killing you and taking it, and while that is a possibility, if you stay out of DZ 1 and 2, most of the time, farming is pretty carefree. When I farm with a group of 4 in DZ 3 and 4, I rarely ever see any other players because most people stay in the lower DZs or they go to DZ 5 and 6, so farming in DZ 3 and 4 keeps us safe from harm, and even if people did try to take our stuff, since we're a full group, it's not really that hard to defend ourselves, and I just really haven't dealt with a lot of people trying to kill us. Maybe that's just because right now a lot of people are trying to farm and really aren't worrying about PvP, but from my experience, I haven't really had to deal with anybody trying to gank us and steal our loot, especially in a group of 4. I know there is always going to be that chance of someone trying to run up on you and steal your loot, and that's probably the only downside with the Dark Zone at the moment, but from my personal experience, like I said, that rarely ever happens, and even if it does happen time to time, it's still way more worth it to farm the DZ for all of the above stated reasons, so I would just say definitely farm the DZ over anything else. So yeah guys, I hope this helped. If it did, please make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, please make sure to drop a like, and subscribe for videos similar to this one, and I'll see you later guys.